Welcome to the CodePlay Culture Podcast, where we discuss tech, gaming, health, and the world around us.
Welcome back to CodePlay Culture Podcast. Today, Chris, Rui, and Logan, we are going to briefly touch in on a topic that's near and dear to a lot of our hearts, these nostalgic video game player people, myself being one of them, physical versus digital. This whole trend of you don't need a disc. You don't need to get off of your sofa. You can just switch the game, just like apps. But then there's also that whole collector. I have a lot of books on my bookshelf. I have a lot of games. This whole move of not releasing physical. And sorry, Chris, go ahead. I'd love to.
No. I was blocking the books on the bookshelf.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And for those listening with audio in the background, Chris has a plethora of books, games, movies. I think I see some big PC box games. You remember like they were like the size of a box of Cheerios before back in the day, like Warcraft.
I remember those, yeah.
Oh, I love them.
Books are upstairs. All the board games are downstairs in the basement.
Board games, like when you're bored of games, do you ever have any of those board games that are like the re-release of like Monopoly that's like super high end? You're like, oh, I don't want to touch it. It's like white glove, $250. These like reissues of like they made them all high end.
Well, I mean, some of the board games I have are pretty high end. Like a few are still in shrink because they're collector's items. But I'm not a big collector in general. It's just they're games that don't see the table very often anyway, but I got a good copy, like whether it be at an auction or game auction or something. But there's only a few of those that are treasured items. But
so what makes it so collectible in terms of board games?
A lot of like the old Avalon Hill board games, like especially some of the older war games, which I'm not a big fan of as a genre, but some of those games, like old bookshelf games you saw that you put them up there, looked like the siding looks like a book.
Yeah.
Just finding them with all the pieces. And if you find one sealed, I mean, these things were printed in small print runs in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
Most people play them online. So having a physical copy, it's nice to have.
Yeah.
My group of friends and I play this real old game called Source of the Nile that, I mean, we built a whole like better character sheets and we'd play it and had very fond memories. I mean, they're hard to find. I spent $55 for a good condition one at auction many years ago, and then like laminated the board. It's a bit dated, but
yeah,
just to have that as a nice memory to my friends and at some point, bust it out, it'd be fun. But
right.
I've seen people blow $400 or $500 on like mint condition games in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah. Oh, you want physical? Boy, you're gonna pay. Like,
yeah, but even then, like even modern board games, they'll come up with high end versions where all the figures are all like 3D printed and painted.
Yeah, was that like Kim Kardashian like crystal? Like what's that crystal jeweler? Swarovski, or is that like a Russian mafia guy, or is it? You know what I'm talking about? Like is like they should have little like Monopoly pieces of like pure crystal, and they're like, oh.
Well, you see it with sets too, right?
Yeah.
Real nice, even Ghost set is a couple $100.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it is not a complete like anti-segue for like hitting board games right away in this topic. It is still the physical versus digital. I have friends that just play chess online, but they grew up like loving it, playing it physically. I get it. Yes, I don't know. I don't want to be too opinionated on it. But I think this is a topic that we're going to have to advocate for our opinions. And I'm of the personal opinion that if I plop down $80 for Final Fantasy, whatever, like I don't want to have a digital license that is subject to whatever that I don't have physically. Like the license is stored on the disc, let's say, from like a ULA perspective, license agreement perspective. If you take that away, like one time I had to migrate from a PS3 to a PS3 Slim, and it was like a back and forth with Sony to get my SingStar songs that I purchased, like $200 in, I do karaoke, big deal. Want to fight, like from Family Guy, it's like, big deal. Want to fight it. No, it's like a thing that my wife and her friends, we have people over and do it. It's like, and then it's like $200 in like SingStar games. I'm like, you transferred new PS3, like you don't get those. It just it's regionally locked, like whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, the whole thing of like, hey, I'm Elon, I'll just turn off the Teslas at free will. I'm not saying that's a thing, but it can be done for a lot of good, like providing satellite internet to Ukraine during times when they can't get it or whatever it is. But my point is, if you walk into a store and buy a pizza, I just don't want a digital representation. That's a bad example, but you get what I'm trying to say for getting something for something.
Right. And it's not good for the consumer, right? As a consumer, I want to own that product that I purchased. Or I want to give it to my friends or lend it out, right? But I can't because it's a digital asset. So Sony tried to mitigate that using their game sharing technology, which is it's good, but it's just not there, right? You can't resell your games. You can let your friends borrow it, but you can't. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's within the household.
I didn't know about that. That's cool.
But I'm not sure. But it's definitely not good for the consumer.
Yeah, but that's the whole drawback to a digital asset too, right? Because there's already going to be a date in terms of the platform with which you can play it on. I mean, having published board games, we had a digital app. We had an award-winning digital app for our game Epigo. But as soon as Apple's went from 32-bit to 64-bit, it didn't work anymore. The second you updated your iPhone, you couldn't play it. You couldn't download the app anymore. Like, they took it off the App Store. We had no control over it.
Right.
Well, you can make it a 64-bit app. I'm like, well, we don't have any money for that. Right.
Yeah.
So, again, that was 7 or 8 years ago. I mean, things can change and they're completely out of your control as a game developer for the most part. I think that's gotten better and you guys are more into this world of coding where you can do things more in HTML5 and other platform independent apps.
Mm-hmm.
Or programming languages, which definitely helps. But, I think that's why you're seeing even these classic games, these PlayStation with the physical, tangible assets are actually holding value now because there's only so many of them made. And, even Nintendo games that have all been ported over into the online Switch world, the physical games haven't lost value. And it's pretty crazy.
Right.
Yeah. Like a Switch game called Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, something like that, Pixel Remaster Collection. So when we were at Game Haven, and shout out to Game Haven in Burlington, Ontario, Canada, great people there, very elaborate. Though. Yeah, bring cash. It's
what's this place?
Like a very organized collection. Like if you had like Microplay or GameStops back in the day, like a mom and pop GameStop that had everything under the sun.
Right.
It's incredible. Like, so when we went there a couple days ago, got Baten Kaitos 1 and 2, which was a GameCube release. And then they re-released it HD remastered on Switch. And it didn't get, what he was explaining is it was hard to come by the physical releases for North American. So this was I guess PEGI 13, PEGI rated European, PAL, format. But because all of the consoles, like right now, I know Switch and PS, I think they're all region like unlocked, right? So as long as you have English in there, or even if you don't, subtitles and like a Japanese import, it just works. So I popped in the European Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 to the Switch, good to go, no issues. And then he mentioned about this Final Fantasy remastered Pixel Edition, which is Final Fantasy 1 through 6, the 8-bit one, where they've up-res to like the best of the best to be like 1080p. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't know about this. And then I looked, it was like a PS4 version, really? And then when you Google it, it's like, the first thing that comes up is Reddit. How are they selling the physical release of this for over $200? Because it apparently it only came out short, and now it's like people really want physical, right?
Yeah.
It's the thing with cash too, and like let's go all like debit, credit, Bitcoin. Like no, like I think there's something to be said about like making a stand for the retainment of. We're not like low techs fighting for paper. Like we're pro. Like we're pro carbon neutral, pro greening. There's something to be said here. I'm not sure how I can articulate it more succinctly, but it has nothing to do with like pollution.
Yeah. You say that, but I think over 51% of the sales now are now digital on PSN. It's surpassed physical.
Yeah, I might want to see where that data is kind of coming from, because if you're, I'm not being like a naysayer, but if you have like the PSN subscription, how are you counting those metrics? Right? Because if you're like automatically counting the ones that you get for free every month, I'm like,
yeah,
really
I don't think it counts those. I think it counts, physical versus,
direct
digital
purchase
purchases, right, through the store. But I don't know. Can they track how many physical? I guess they can track how many go out, how many are shipped, know how much
Well,
discount they
when
get.
they go to distributors, right?
Yeah, right.
You're not going to get all the individual store sales in the resale market, but you know how many you actually produced and delivered through distribution.
When you put the disc into a PlayStation, they probably have some kind of like insert statement to a database of saying, hey, this person put in the physical disc here, and they might count those.
Let's hope not, but it's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah. So in terms of like playing the game, right? Again, it's more fun having the physical disc, taking it to somebody's house, popping it in and playing. But at the same time, it's so convenient, right? Logan, I come to your place and we just log into my PSN account and then get like hundreds of fun games to play, right?
That's why
it's super convenient.
PC games would have it almost good where you like install it and then you don't need the disc. But then the license, in a perfect world, like if they could figure out this from a licensing perspective, I put it in, it installs it, I don't need the disc. Okay. It has a one and done. And then maybe you can like alleviate that, maybe like lift the license and say, okay, I'm selling this. I'm going to like, deactivate my license tied to this. I don't want to switch discs, but I want to own I want them to be installed. They are installed discs. I guess when you put the disc in after it installs a 50, 60 gigabyte install of Death Stranding, it just really uses the disc as the license proof.
Yeah, I mean, for PC, the only other thing I've only ever bought games on Steam, and I don't do a lot of PC gaming, but my Civ 6 license, Civ 5, they're all on Steam. Like I never bought physical copies, and the copies they do sell, they have really nice anniversary editions, but there's so much DLC anyway that actually owning, like I've got the poster in behind me because my buddy was one of the developers, but if you have a love for for a franchise or an IP, then you might want that physical collector's edition copy. But it's more of just like you'd have a piece of art on your wall, or have that tangible thing where someone walking through your house, oh, you're into Final Fantasy or you're into Civ. It becomes a talking.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, same thing with books, though, right? I mean, I know people that just love the Kindle because of the ease. Like, oh, I could pay $3 for a book instead of $13 because there's no physical, trees in there. But there's a different feeling in reading. I don't want to hold another device, and everyone has a personal preference. I think the same thing applies to games to some extent.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I feel like I'm kicking and screaming as I'm being dragged down to the digital devil, but I'm standing up for that stuff. But what you said there really resonates with me, Chris. I've done that before where I'll have like a Spotify subscription and I listen to the album so many times. I'm like, I love this artist. I'm going to buy the CD. It's going to stay there shrink wrapped on my shelf, whatever. But it was an extra little token of like giving back as like I bought, the physical book of the 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss, but I fell in love with the Audible one that I purchased. Sometimes I'll purchase things multiple times as a way of showing I appreciate and love the content of this content creator. I love that philosophy too. And I wanted to ask you about the game that's not 64-bit. I know we talked a little bit about that. Do you want to send us a code and we can let's say we could spend 4 hours to just put it right back in the App Store? Like I'd love to. Yeah. That seems like a cool little pro bono challenge,
Yeah, but even still, I mean, we produced. You just happen to have a handy copy. We produced Epico, right? Like this was from 2010 now, and making a box that was 12.5 inches by 12.5 inches was a big mistake. I'll keep that clean because it's impossible to fit in any U.S. Postal Service boxes. But we had an awesome board game store open up about a month ago, a town over from me. Fantastic owners, great guy. And him and his wife, I was able to sell them copies. I still have this physical asset. I've got a bunch, boxes upon boxes down in my basement. whereas the digital app is useless, right? Until I get someone to write the code. But board games are a special case because I think that the novelty is in the physical manifestation of pieces and flipping cards, shuffling. Those are always fond memories. I'm getting my daughter into it as well. So,
I love board games.
Yeah.
I'm just teaching my son how to play Risk right now. So I bought Risk many years ago. Risk 2049. It was a futuristic Risk.
Yeah.
And we're just like, I'm teaching how to play.
Nice.
We're playing like a watered down version where, roll the dice and just attack, just the basics, very, very basics.
Yeah.
But man, it's fun. It's fun.
But
just
you're gonna have
memories
memories tied to that game, right? When your son finds that in the closet 20 years from now, he'll remember playing those games with you, right? Like, and that's I can go down to my board games, and some of these haven't seen the table since I had kids, right? 5, 6, 7 years. Some are older, but I can instantly put myself back in that place whenever I see that object. It's the same with a book on a shelf or a video game case that's on your mantle, right?
Yeah, for sure.
For a brief moment, we transported into those memories.
Yeah,
but like you said, look, I mean, some of these I listened to an audio book, and I either picked up a copy to use bookstore or even just bought it new just to have it on the shelf because exactly to your point, support the author, but
it makes sense. And about the memories, right? So like we'll crack open again physical DVDs too, and we talked about this last time, but just crack open those DVDs and pop one in and it's fun. Just crack them open, man.
Crack open those Betamax. Yeah.
That's good.
It was like my wife doesn't come down to the basement that often because I'm working on making it more clean and tidy to be up to her level of standards to be around. But like she's like super, 8th year champion, whatever, minimalist, where I'm like a novice where I'm trying to get there. So she comes down, she's like, why do we got all these like 4K Blu-rays? I'm like, we have like Netflix, which has, Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, 4K. Like, why do we have that? And I was like, well, when we have guests over and I put it into Xbox Series X 4K, and then it's like HDMI 2.2 right to an Atmos receiver, 9.2 speakers. Even though it says Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision on Netflix, and if you have a gigabit fiber up and down to your, ISP, like they're still buffering. It's not lossless. It's not 100%. Like it is such a dramatic difference in quality by having the physical with 4K disc alone. Like you can take that back to Blu-ray or DVD, or maybe like I get maybe streaming a Betamax or streaming a DVD streaming 4K is probably better than DVD quality Disney or whatever. Maybe not, whatever. But there is a certain thing to say, hey, take the physical current equivalent 4K or Blu-ray. It's better physical. Like it's higher quality. It's like if you're an audio file, video file, like damn, like it's so worth it to buy physical your favorite movies,
Right. But even then, a CD, is still digitized, right?
Yeah.
Even Blu-ray digitized, where you're seeing a big push back towards analog. I mean, that's why vinyl records, you see them everywhere.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I do love the click and the pop. Like that's not like a, a ghetto hip hop thing or whatever, like for ruffling people down, but like of records that like gritty click and pop. A lot of my favorite artists are Vinny Paz did like 2 albums ago. I messaged him on Twitter. I was like humbled by him responding to me. He's like, yeah, we only came out with it on vinyl. I was like, good for you guys. Right. Like I love that. So I should probably buy that one, but I like that. You got one, Rui. The next time I see you, Chris, I'll have to give you we have like this really cool from Amazon provide these like suitcase level vinyl players. Looks like you're going into like you're a hitman going on a job with the suitcase, but you open it up. It's a really convenient USB, Bluetooth, and physical analog player. But you're right about analog.
Yeah.
You guys ever show you this? You probably don't see this or you don't hear this on the audio podcast, but if I click this desk view, you see how it's like showing like here?
Yeah.
What do you think about an AI version of your board game, Chris, where like it would show the pieces digitally on the board and then it's an actual like, an AR version of, they're doing that with Minecraft and stuff, where you can.
There's a program called Tabletop Simulator, and that got a lot of. It's highly prevalent in the board game prototyping industry. The whole world. I mean, that's where a lot of playtesting gets done, because playtesters is hard to get together. You may have people around the world, where it's physically moving things in a 3D space.
Yeah.
But it's more of a platform, and you just program, add in your art files, add in, I want to be able to roll the dice, what's on the die. So there's that. Board game arenas, and probably the most popular place to play games, strategy games online. They have a lot of the popular ones, and they're great ways to play. There's still something is lacking, but are you trying to get the plays in of a game to discover its mechanical and or thematic depth, or are you trying to have focusing on the moment and the collectiveness of the game? Right. I think that you can approach any game or piece of art in different ways. Like I think reading a book physically versus listening to an audiobook are going to be different experiences.
Yeah.
And if you really love something, you want to get all those experiences, right? Like I've played through the ages, like my favorite Desert Island board game, I'd say 400 times, a conservative estimate. And I'd say 370 of those, maybe less, are digital. But I still remember the games I played, how I learned the game and with the physical pieces. I still have my previous version of the game downstairs. I probably won't see the table until my kid's at least 15, but that's how, she'll get introduced to it. Yeah. But, it doesn't make my love for the game or my physical copy any less different. It's just I wanted to explore the mechanical depth, and the only way is to play online, because each game typically takes 3 to 4 hours. So digital implementations can really help support a game's audience, right? I'm still playing the game because I have that digital way to keep playing it.
Oh, right.
And keep the connections with the people who also play, right? It depends on how obscure a piece of art is. And games and video games, board games, books, I mean, they're all art, right?
Yeah.
Should we have GTINs on these things, like globally unique identifiers? Same thing they did with like the like GS1 did with agriculture, and like Apple's have the same barcode globally and all that stuff for digital assets. I'm not saying NFTs, but I'm talking about like, hey, if I create a Word document on my desktop and it says, Logan is cool, and I save it, like, should that not generate like a unique piece of whatever with a license, and kind of like NFTs, but for every single thing that's like, I don't know, but then we're getting into global repository, Big Brother level of we can see it all and know it all. But
yeah, and it's also, you want the provenance of it, right? If you make a digital copy of a digital game, tweak a few things, then can you go sell it?
Yeah.
As a content creator, I'm like, hell no, that's my IP. But like, even then, there's no enforcement for any of that crap anyway.
Yeah. China will still like they'll just dismantle it and remake a regurgitated, like, that's typically what happens with physical, electronics and stuff like that. And like, whatever, like, I don't blame anyone for trying to be a smart capitalist, like there's like, I feel like a lot of people that sell software online found this really good SDK for, imagine the most beautiful maps you've ever seen, not Google Maps, not like Waze, not Tesla. It's called Mapbox. And I think like Skip the Dishes and all these people use it, and it shows like, it's like, just, they're not like, Uber doesn't have their own, like, it's like literally a very behind the scenes, like, oh, it's a software kit for iOS and Android, but they're not open source, but they have all the code. Well, they're open source, but you have to pay for the license. But you can literally go get the code, download it, and just use it. But in their licensing terms on GitHub, it says you need a license for this, or you're going to be like legally pursued. So it's like the whole licensing thing of, like you should buy it, but like, here you go if you want it, whatever. But yeah, it's hard to like patent chase people if they're just going to like find loopholes. Like, we don't have the lawyers to do that, to be able to, damn capitalism getting in the way of creativity once again. Like, let's make it fun first and forget about the money. It's like hard to say when you got to feed your family.
Yeah, absolutely, man. That's a good point.
Even with, we talked before about the digitization of older games, right? And I guess the most recent thing in the gaming world has been the Tetris kid, right? Who physically got the game to defeated it, I guess is the right term.
Yeah, like, he completed Tetris.
Yeah.
Like,
No, he got a kill screen in Tetris, right? But there were guys that went through this crazy math of like how to actually generate the kill screen. I went through the history of this, but like just the technique, there was the whole technique of like tapping the bottom of the controller to get like, because it should be impossible like for someone to actually move the things left and right. Like people figured out physical ways of like getting the pieces to move faster. And it took decades. Like no one thought about this till like these kids started trying to break the game. But like you can't, Tetris has been remade for how many times, right?
Yep.
You can download Tetris 99 on your Switch, but like you can't do that.
Yeah.
Right? You can't do that. Like they've made it more accessible, sure. They've added more bells and whistles and more fancy music, but like that physical NES game got so much value because like you need an actual old Nintendo controller, you need that combination to generate a kill screen to do these.
Yes.
And so it's built this whole cult following around it. And I think that's where the value is from this stuff. It's having that physical experience.
Yeah.
Now, but the newer systems, I don't think have that.
No, because it's getting more and more away from that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like if a Nintendo Switch could just like become like Nintendo Switch 4K 2, like the new version. It's like, oh, we're just an app now. Would you really be surprised? A little bit, but like, okay, that makes sense. Like with all the, I was like, I clicked on the wrong thing on our bedroom Samsung TV, and I thought it was Xbox hooked up to HDMI 1, but it was really Samsung's Xbox app for the Xbox cloud streaming service like Netflix. I was like, okay, yeah, video games is just like a Netflix that streams now. Like, and then weirdly, I watched this YouTube video last night, which is a guy talking about Adobe suite of products, how everyone pirates them. And for good reason he's like, the video was called pirating Adobe software is good. Change my mind or something like that, is because like the old versions, they you can't activate them anymore, right? So let's say you plopped $1,000 down for a CS2 Dreamweaver or whatever Fireworks, because the activation server has been deprecated. When you install that on a new machine, even if you have like, let's say XP that will run it or whatever, it just won't activate. So what he's advocating for is, no, I purchased that. And they're like, so there is something to be said about the old console will play the game 100% as long as it doesn't go through a hardware failure or whatever it is. And then there's like this whole, like, yeah, maybe it won't work on the next one because they were using emulators and updates to backwards compatibility to have it. So I think like you do need to have, like, if you do care about that piece of content, you got to take care of it and like, make sure it's not like aging or dying due to like natural,
Yeah, but you're not going to develop a game unless you think that there's actually a market for it still, right? If there's some redeeming qualities of it. So it's also a way to get these things to continue to survive. It's the reason you reprint a book. All right. So there's not 3,000 copies and exist. There's 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. That's how things, you want to keep things in the zeitgeist. So you keep it in print.
Yeah.
And you're only going to keep it in print if it's selling copies. I mean, that's capitalism, sure. But, same thing with redeveloping or modernizing a video game. Doesn't ruin the original experience. It just, keeps it accessible.
Yep. It makes it's like a version, here's the new version, right? Like, and if it's not relevant, maybe they won't have enough money to, or if they cloud fund it or GoFundMe, then it doesn't happen, right? Keep it in the zeitgeist, right?
Yeah. But sometimes it ruins it.
Yes. Like remakes over remasters.
Or just, hey, listen, if you really love this, like there's the original version, you can play that. And if, again, people are introduced to it through a new vector.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's only going to increase the value of the older stuff, I think.
For sure. Yeah. It's like the whole thing, like, turn your music down. What is that? And it's like, Dad, it's rap. It's like, oh, but it's not the rap that I listen to. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we'll think about it from our perspective, like not just everyone's perspective. It keeps it relevant. It's a rehash.
And I think there's a deep-seated human need for collectivity, right? To assemble things, hunter-gatherer type behavior where, like, I think the high end of this collector, especially in the video game world, just insane, right? I went to a convention last year, and it's like they have like old comic books that get graded and they're in the plastic, right? And they have like original SNES games like in the original box, mint condition, like it's in the sealed box, they'll never be opened again. I'm like, and it's $20,000. I'm like, what? you can't open it, you can't play. Like it just kind of, to me, it was a bridge to. There is that collectivity aspect of it. There's just that's a different breed for me, right?
Yeah, I mean, like you
I
don't
think
play with your toys.
I think mainly the people. Yeah, the people who buy that are looking for investments, right? Either short or long term. I don't think they're gamers per se. They're just looking for some kind of way to make money.
Yeah,
and the generation that grew up with
the expense of their spouse.
well, it's also the fact that the generation that grew up with physical games, right, like us, now have disposable incomes and nostalgia factor.
Yeah,
I think it's. I think that's different than the vinyl thing, which is more of a desire for the analog.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, like who wants to go back and play NES games? They're terrible. There's like a handful of good ones. That's about it.
Yeah, I do like when they upres it. Like I think it was called like 30-second hero or something. Have you guys heard of that game? 30-second hero,
No.
30-minute hero. It was on PlayStation 4 or 3, maybe like a downloadable one, $10, whatever. And it's like Final Fantasy, but you literally have like 30 minutes to beat the entire game. And when you're like running on the world map, it's like this whole amphetamine, like caffeine, like you go so quick. It's like this terrifying, like psychosis level of like, this guy's jacked on Monster mixed with Red Bull. And you have 30 minutes to figure out the game, like to beat it. And then it just resets. But it's pretty cool. It's got this great like techno music. And then when you're in the battles for like, turn-based battles, imagine they just go so quick. It's like, it's not as bad as I'm depicting. It's really well done. But I'm not sure how I was getting. Oh yeah. So that was like a beautiful, like not 4K, but like 1080p 8-bit, and getting back to Steam, that Final Fantasy Remaster Pixel Collection on Steam is available. I can get that in digital, and they're beautiful. Like Final Fantasy, let's say 3. And they have like, they've redone the fonts, because the last one, they got a whole bunch of negative feedback about that font's not appropriate for that Final Fantasy. Like it's so good. So like, I do like that I can always get them on digital, but I do like, I don't expect everyone to make everything physical. Like I get there's a cost for that. But
it's also made it more accessible because you can just, if you have the digital, you can just bring it on your laptop or your Switch or whatever, your PSP, and and if you got 2 young kids and it's 9:00 at night and you're waiting for them to go to bed, like you're not going to have your whole PlayStation with a TV and everything else going, right?
Yes, exactly.
It's just, it comes down to how much do you love a thing and how you prefer to enjoy it.
I mean, they have made it accessible with the region unlocking. It used to be much harder. You used to have to I think with PlayStation 1, you had to either have a PAL PS1 or you'd have to mod your PS1. Like, I remember my buddy Bart, he got it for his birthday. I was so jealous of it's for his first communion or something. And then you have to hold down you have to eject it and hold down the eject button. And then the disc is spinning, and take that disc off and put on a burnt
I think I remember that.
I was like, oh my God, this is like some MacGyver level of toothpicking, which is super cool.
Oh, I don't miss the days where I had to pull a Nintendo cartridge out.
It's like Nintendo harmonica.
Tapping out.
You're like, I'm allergic to dust now. Oh, my specific allergy to dust is Nintendo cartridges. The rest of the dust is fine.
It's silicone scrapings and
it's like silicone fiberglass cough lately. It's like,
all the actual lead in the solder on all those joints.
Oh yeah. You had me at solder. I feel like I should solder because I think that's manly. No, man, soldering is like a version of welding.
So I was in college, our college banned lead solder halfway through. So and the stuff now it's still not the same, but it's way better than it was. And the first non-lead solder can was so bad, and so we would just we have our own little treasured supplies, and we
you guys are closet glue sniffers, but on silicone instead of it actually makes you prosperous, not takes away your life, because you're building.
The new stuff just didn't work.
No,
technology.
What were you soldering, dude? What were you building?
Electrical engineer. Like we were actually building.
Oh, just so I can brush it off. Electrical engineer.
Well, sorry, I was technically as an ocean engineer, so I did electrical and mechanical.
Oh yeah,
we used to build underwater robots and stuff.
Yeah, like so after you made the dolphins talk, when were you going to let us know that you've had these novel breakthroughs? Like, the tucking the Pulitzer Prize. Surprise, Pulitzer.
Yeah, it's one of those fields where you have to go back for your master's and PhD, and I wasn't doing it. I just decided to go work on trains because that made sense.
Yeah. Yeah, like Sheldon Cooper. Like, this guy should probably not be so interested in choo-choos. No, like that stuff is like, honestly, you go into those Warhammer stores, like, I'm like, oh my God, I love this. I used to like the people that could paint them. I'm like I used to admire them so much. It's like, how do you not use like a microscope to like paint this piece? Like, seeing this one dude carve Godzilla out of a grain of rice, or like this. There's like a Guinness Book World Record for the smallest. I don't know, something. It's like this micro stuff is like pretty incredible.
There's a lot of crazy hobbies out there.
Yes, I mean, none of them are like. I think we'll get you a date, and be like, oh yeah, what are you into?
Wait, rice carving won't get you a date? What are you talking about?
I like paint real small like orcs and stuff. You're like, she's like, oh yeah, it's like, no, that's not gonna like, it's not like that, but it's pretty nerdy. It's not very whatever on. But you know what? The fuck, I love that stuff. I love all that world. Like I'm a public geek, but I'm like trying to not be geeky or whatever it is. Like it's like a cool nerd, whatever. But like, yeah, I got my demons.
Let the nerd flag fly. That's what I say.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Speaking of which, Rui is agreed to pull me on his. I was gonna say moped, but no, he's got a Harley. No, you got a Kawasaki, right?
Yeah, Ninja, yeah.
And then he's gonna pull me on that on a skateboard. And there's a broken sidewalk near my house, and it looks like a launch ramp. But it's very subtle incline. And so you got to go probably like what? We'll go
this episode of Jackass Canada.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's going to be like Jackass, man.
Long sleeve for sure. I'm not going in short sleeve.
You going to wear a helmet?
That would be a smart decision. But most skateboarders don't wear it because they're, it's not cool and whatever. But yeah, I'll probably not wear a helmet. The thing with helmets,
the analog experience is what you're saying.
Yeah, I want the analog. I need to bleed.
You don't want to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2?
Yeah, I don't want to like be concussed. Like he's a little concussed. How can you tell? Well, he's like dripping his mouth juice onto my head right now. It's like, okay, yeah, he might be a little concussed, but
contused. So after we do that jump, we're gonna go to we talked about going to the playground, and you're gonna sit on that merry-go-round. I'll put the wheel on that merry-go-round. It'll accelerate and it'll just kind of spin. Yeah. And we'll have some cool footage.
Where like we don't drink any kind of alcohol. So like that's the closest we can get to the spins. So like I like it. Like I think it's like probably healthier for you.
I feel like next week we're going to rename this to the Cold Culture Podcast because you guys have too much fun playing with.
Yeah, exactly.
Not enough work.
Yeah, we're going to do monkey bars and that whole zip line thing too at that same park.
Yeah, for sure. We can do it all.
I feel like adults don't play anymore. Like I'd like to call on you, Chris, this afternoon and be like, and ask your wife, like, can Chris come out and play? And she'd be like, no, he doesn't play with losers like you. Like when's the last time you went outside and like no kids involved? I'm just going to go play. Like I think
it's I had Major League Hockey where I literally.
You're right. Yeah, skateboard, and you Rui, you like cruise around and you like you're on your Kawasaki with the baseball bat, like a mafia guy, right?
Tank top, baseball bat. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Road rash. That's a game, right? Yeah.
Rui,
we are at time for the Digital Express, expressing to. Converting from physical to digital and so on and so forth. Final takeaways. I guess me personally, in my opinion, I love digital. The accessibility, I prefer getting something for what I pay for. I do love them like a whole bunch of collection of books.
Support your creatives.
Yeah. Support your creatives. Chris, final thoughts?
That's it. Just, Pay for what you love, because then the people that create what you love will be able to create more of it because they can feed their families. That's basically it.
Absolutely.
And you can support local establishments that support, like you talked about your game store in Burlington.
Yeah.
Your friendly local game stores, indie bookstores, because that those are the people in your community that are helping to grow the community, whereas opposed to some multinational corporation that's just trying to eke out their margins. So
you talked about the game store too, that open up over close in town by, but yeah, support your local. That's good. Rui?
Yeah, nothing to add except don't get sucked into the 75% off PSN deals because, it's a rabbit hole.
Speaking from experience,
credit card debt, PayPal disputes.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Take care.